Hello, good evening. Welcome to Chess Comedy Books 17. In Chess Comedy Books number 5, I looked at the magazine originally published in the Midlands in Sutton Coldfield, which is just called Chess, which still exists in one form or another. Well, in a different form, much improved form. But today I want to look at a magazine which is in a way closer to my heart, BCM. For some years I was the editor. I'm not anymore. And I wanted to show you some of the recent issues. There's very little point in me getting out the issues that I edited, because although I might know something about them, I can hardly be subjective about it, can I? I can't be objective. I never know the difference, actually. But whatever the difference is, I'm now going to show you a few of the recent issues. Here we are. It's quite a colourful cover, isn't it? It says, a special kind of luck and the quest for the perfect mindset. Well, I've always wanted that. Like every morning I wake up and I go, hey, have a good scratch. And I think, I wish I could have the perfect mindset. This is a January issue from 2 years ago, but it basically, the magazine is like this now. It's not changed. And Jolly Goods too. There's a little offer here. If you've never subscribed before, you can get it at a knockdown price. I'll put the contact details down below. There's no point in my quoting the prices because they may have changed, and you can just go onto the website and have a look. Here's a picture of Mr. Nakamura. It's all done in colour. This was John Upham's idea when we were doing it. I said I wasn't going to mention when we did it, but nevertheless, before then it was black and white, and now it's colour. As you can see, it's pretty dense. If you look down that column, look at that. That, in algebraic notation, figurine algebraic notation, is not to be sniffed at. Here they are, the London Classic, playing, and there, playing out the inevitable Berlin defense to the Lopez 3, knight f6. I'm not actually certain that the Berlin defense is 3 knight f6 in isolation. I think if you look into it a little bit more, which I haven't done, you'll find that certain offshoots constitute that. After all, white could respond any which way, including taking on c6, couldn't he? I mean, is that still a Berlin defense? I don't know. Here's a picture of Mr. Jones, Wayne Jones. I would think his hands are sort of almost like tentacles, aren't they? He's a pretty impressive figure, isn't he? Look at that. He's just won the European, what is it, rapid play or blitz or something? Anyway, congratulations to him, whatever it was. And here is Tricky Mickey, who was still, if not riding high, the #1 Englishman. And he's been our #1 player for a very long time. Just going to have a little sip of tea. Yes, Michael Adams has been the English #1. Having taken over from Nigel Short. Who in his turn, I suppose, took over from... Oh, that's an interesting question. I suppose maybe Tony Miles. This will show you how tough chess can be if you look at the look on Luke McShane's face. Except you can't see all of Luke McShane's face because he's got his hand over it. And he's playing Jones again. He looks pretty cheesed off. Here we have an interview with Dominic Lawson, who at one time was editor of the Telegraph. I think I'm wrong in saying, or maybe it was the Sunday Telegraph. And And his father, Nigel Lawson, was the father of Nigella Lawson, who does bits of cookery, doesn't she, on the telly? I don't really fancy Nigella Lawson, to be honest. I shouldn't have said that, should I? Here we have annotated games from the guys. This is a bit more modest and therefore probably likely to be of interest to less experienced players or just somebody that's just looking through for fun, not necessarily taking it wildly seriously. Here's a little thing. Yes, the book is out now. Well, it came out, but unfortunately it went away again in the estimation and in the stock of chess and bridge because Malcolm Payne said he didn't want it on the shelves. I'm told that his problem was fueled by, no, not necessarily caused directly, by the FIDE elections, which were the world governing body politicians. And he was in the other camp from Nigel Short, who wrote the introduction to this. It's written jointly with Ray Keane and Byron Jacobs, who is one of Ray's associates in the long years when he was doing the Times. Here's a long article. I can't pronounce this gentleman's name. Ojanen. No, I'm sure that's not how it's pronounced. There he is. Yeah, he's playing with his overcoat on. I don't blame him. It's freezing at the moment as I'm speaking to you. Here's Tao. In here, wearing dark glasses. Who do you think that is? It is Keres. He is fondly remembered. At Keres's funeral, there were hundreds of people there. The mourners stretched all the way down the road, and Julian Hodgson wrote, what an amazing fact. He was a national hero. He was an international star over the chessboard. And here's an unusual player. I have heard of him before I read this, but it doesn't spoil my enjoyment. That is Frank Crowell, who was Australian, I think. Nowadays, Australian players rely pretty heavily on playing online, but then they would have played postally and all. They would have played face-to-face. Of course they wouldn't. It's ridiculous to think otherwise. Chess is full of flying comets, it says. One of them is Frank Crowell, who was born in Melbourne in 1902 and spent his childhood in Shanghai, where he won 2 minor championships at the age of 10 and 11 and a major championship at 14. I'm just reading from an article by Alan Smith, who is from Manchester, and has for some years now done the Quotes and Queries column for BCM, which is amongst my favourite. The Dutch IM, Gerard Welling, contacted me once and asked me if I'd heard of Crowell, which I had, and asking if I thought that his style was in any way linked or any represented or mirrored in any way that of Mike Basman. So as you can tell, firstly, that's compliment coming from Gerard himself, extremely ingenious player. And secondly, that it's interesting to look at some of the older games, particularly if you can set them down in some reasonable context. Now here's another issue of BCM, again, a couple of years ago. And there is Vladimir Kramnik, who was world champion. I think he's had problems with rheumatics or something, poor fellow. When he spoke at the London Classic, I didn't go to many of the lectures, didn't do much when I was there at all, actually. I had a cup of coffee with Debbie Evans, and what could be nicer. But I didn't do very much. I looked at the bookstall, being me, and that's what always interests me. But he gave a little intro, and he spoke of being in a member of the Botvinnik School, and he's the last member of the Botvinnik sort of academy that actually met Mikhail Mostelevich. And now the school has changed its name to the Kramnik, which I think is a nice idea. Here's Magnus Carlsen asleep with Giri, isn't it? Is that Giri? Yes, it is. Back to back, the two, well, I was going to say boys. He's a grown man of 30 now. And once again, here's Kramnik looking lost in thought. I was going to say introspection, but I'm not sure because he's sitting his eyes sideways, as if to indicate possibly slight annoyance and also, well, depth of thought, I suppose. I'm no great tea drinker these days, but thought I'd give myself a little cheer me up. As you can see, that the magazine does go in for a lot of artistic persiflage. I'm not really sure I like it that much. When I was editor, we didn't have such resources, you know, reproducing text in larger fonts. But on the other hand, if you want to emphasize a point or you don't, you have the space to spare, it's no crime. It's no crime. Here's the young man who's making great splashes, Mr. Dubov. I'm calling him Mr. because I can't even remember what his first name is. But one thing is for certain, we will hear about him again. And it's nice that players are coming through because obviously there aren't over-the-board tournaments at the moment. And so therefore, those that do bludgeon through, my goodness, they're going to have to work pretty hard to not just to get through, but stay there because a lot of people want their blood. Here is Vasily Ivanchuk, as I'm told to pronounce it, there, down there. And as you can see, he appears to be pretty bitter and twisted. It's quite amusing about Ivanchuk in as much that I'm told he plays drafts. Now, he plays in drafts tournaments, but he's actually not a very good player. I wonder what his ego at the end of the game, I wonder whether he lets it drop as if they didn't know that, in fact, he has been rated #1 on the list, equal with Kasparov in his time. That was very many years ago, but nevertheless, he has. Here is looking like he's going to sing, though he isn't. I wouldn't, knowing his capabilities, I wouldn't be surprised if he could, if he was anything of a singer. That is Mr. Stuart Conquest. Stuart played at Basingstoke when he was a little boy, and he always used to wear his school blazer. He won't thank me for saying that. And I sometimes used to sit next to his father in tournaments. He's gone on to make a living out of chess in one form or another, playing. He hasn't really written very much. I can't think of anything he's written. Here's Danny Gormally in Pixelation. An article called Squeezing Blood from a Stone. And it's written by Theo Slade, one of the young men. He's in America now, but he was in the west of England. One of the young men who I picked out to write for BCM, and it's gone from strength to strength. There we are. Now, this won't stretch you. It might test you. Who is that? Who is that? I'll give you a clue. It's the second world champion. some games from the tournament in Moscow, Aeroflot, which I think is their Airways, isn't it? I think it is. I can imagine that the Russians aren't particularly streamlined in their aviation any more than they are with their cars or anything else, but I could be wrong. This is an example of what I mean. It's a bit of a waste of space. I was just about to say waste of time, but it's not. I mean, that looks nice, and you could almost frame it, except you wouldn't, would you? Because it's your chess magazine. Talking about St. Louis, the chess club there, they have a World Hall of Fame, and they have all pictures and massively of grandmasters and beautifully endowed tournaments with the US closed is held there with, you know, even if you come last. Here's Lasker again. That is not by Marcel Duchamp, but whoever it is, Nettie Robinson, are you watching this? They clearly know what they're doing. That would be an interesting picture to have. Misunderstanding the Great Master. The Myth About Lasker's Psychology by Alexander Kolovich, who is a writer for BCM, their main features writer, really. Lucky them. Here's Lasker and Tarrasch. There. That picture appears in a book of chess by Hugh Alexander, whom I mentioned a couple of chinwags ago, and they thought that it was Rubinstein. Well, that's forgivable. There we have it. Unmistakably Ruskin. This is not a book I've seen. I know it's been out for a while. A biography of Alekhine. Alekhine travelled very widely. He was a very strong player, even amongst the top grandmasters. So anything about his life is sort of snapped up, isn't it? This is an article by Julian Caulfield. When I was on holiday, I met Julian quite by chance. And he's turned his hand to writing little stories. A little bit, I think you would describe it as whimsy. Now, I always like to say, who's that? Who's that going like this? If you don't know, go to the bottom of the glass and don't come back. Just in point of fact, Bobby Fischer. And he's playing against Balinas, who went on to become a very strong player, but his health was very dodgy. It's an article by Sean Talbot, who was my boss. He's still my friend, very definitely my friend. We've had some good chats over the years and some nice meals out. We sometimes go to a Chinese place or whatever in Reading. He lives near there. They're talking about the team event, the Four Nations, which has been going for some years now in England. It travels around the various venues, normally ends up in a hotel or something. And here's an article by one of the great saviours of British chess, Adam Ralph. Adam has been friends with me for about 25 years, and he's a great guy, and he's done an astronomical amount for chess. He seems to have endless energy and resource. I happen to know that he's also, for all of this, a very modest man. This is an article about Joseph William Mellor. This is a distinguished scientist, and he wrote, author of a comprehensive treatise on inorganic and theoretical chemistry, which ran to 16 volumes. Well, perhaps he was born near Huddersfield, then he went to New Zealand. I'm not surprised. Who would want to be anywhere near Huddersfield. He was a late starter, distinguished himself at college, and obviously he was something of a whiz at chess. It's got some studies by Ian Watson. Ian is a long-standing supporter of BCM, both as reader and columnist. I suppose what I'm trying to say is contributor, isn't it? Now here's something suitably patriotic. A great start. Does it say that? A great result for England, sorry. And there's the flag of St. George. And we're all red this month. What else does it say? Nakamura wins his 5th US title. That's what I was linking in to say at the St. Louis Chess Club World Hall of Fame, the World Centre. Studying the classics, an article by Ray Keane, who has for many, many years supported the magazine. In fact, until recently, I think he actually paid a subscription. He doesn't know. Whoops, shouldn't have said that. Here's the England team looking a bit dumbstruck. If you can name everybody here: John Spielman, Luke McShane, Mickey Adams, Gwen Jones, Malcolm Payne on the end, who was a non-playing captain, presumably, and David Howell here. So some of these young men will stay in the team. John Spielman was a reserve. He is one of the deepest analysts that England has ever known and one of the strongest players. But his health hasn't been great. He does tend to have to take draws when, I think in his heart, he'd like to play on. England came second to the Russians. That was nice. Second to the Russians, that's no disgrace, is it? And here's John, deep in thought. I encountered him about 4 or 5 years ago for the first time in ages, and he was in the press room. He was very helpful to a number of people who have a lot less confidence in that sort of environment than he does, and he was speaking Russian to all and sundry. Here's the ladies' team. The Chinese. They seem to have sort of fishing coats on. They won't like my saying that, will they? I think they just wanted a corporate image. And there's the Russians. And do you know what? I recognize most of them. There we are. Sorry, I'm not very good at this. But I would draw back from, this is Grishchuk here. I would draw back from trying to name them. A sign of the times. Here again, this is this habit of putting things in large fonts. I mean, that's something that's been in there already, so do you want it again? I think the answer to that question is yes, presumably they do. Mr. Nakamura. Just finishing my tea, you'll have to excuse me. At the top of chess, the world of chess, there's probably more money now, I can categorically state, than at any time in the history. But as things drop down to even 50 players in the world, which is where, say, Michael Adams might be at the moment, I mean, he gets a few quid, of course he does, but it's not great. Here is the varsity match, Oxford versus Cambridge. There, which is a bit more these days of a social gathering than once it was. Quite a lot of the players from the darkest recesses of time turn up, like Bill Hartston or Ray Keane and Leonard Barden, and in his time, the late Adrian Hollis. I've heard of some of these guys. Of course I have. Now, here we are, studying the classics, and himself a classic, Mr. Raymond Dennis Keane, in Full Flight and Explanation. There he is, looking colourful and relaxed. Ray wrote when he was a young man, and to considerable acclaim, and fully justified in this case, a book called Aaron Nimzowitsch, A Reappraisal. I bought it at the time, and I liked it then, and I love it now. It opened many windows of understanding. There's old Nimzowitsch, looking modest. I actually think he was quite, that looks a little bit of a sarcastic face. There's an article about, now, she probably won't like this, but I'm going to say it. It was many years before I knew how to pronounce her name, which is Jovi Hauska. She would forgive me if I called her Jovanka, but that is how it is pronounced, not Huska. Her family used to come along to the Basingstoke congresses, which I inhabited at one time, and it's sad to think that those are so long ago, and there won't be any again. An article, I haven't seen this actually, about the McCutcheon variation by Pete Tamburo. Never heard of the guy. Both bold and aggressive, the McCutcheon variation of the French defence offers many possibilities for black. Yes, it does. I think it's. I would quite recommend it. You have to be careful at the start, I think, with that, because the exchanges or the clarification of the centre means that white, by definition, has more space. And he may start lashing out with attacking ideas, queens all over the place. But as long as your king is fairly safe, the odd pawn, I was going to say the odd pawn or two. No, I wouldn't want to go 2 pawns down. But if you go a pawn down, but the position is sufficiently complex and you've got your pieces on fairly acceptable squares, yeah, I rather like it. Anyway, here's a picture of J.L. McCutcheon. There he is. Can't say I've ever seen a picture of him before. Looks suitably scholarly, doesn't he? I think they just put this in for a joke. Here's a picture of Walter Pratt. I can't help thinking, well, that is not how you spell Pratt, nor is he any relation of mine. I'm going to put that to one side because I'm going to show that to John Upham. Now here's a young lady that's going to go to Vision Express and get new glasses. Meanwhile, she is adorning the cover of the British Chess magazine. I had to gain respect from men, says Judith Polgar. Well, Judith, when you exited chess, the BBC contacted me and asked me what I thought. The researcher said, I've only got 3 hours to put the article together. And I can't help thinking you were a bit sour-faced, both towards chess in general, the chess world in general, and also your national federation. And here we have some ladies playing. Look at that. There's Judith here, but that's not what I'm referring you to. Looks like a French impressionist painting. in the traditional style. And here is Vera Menchik, whom I've mentioned before, and the many Chinese grandmasters, and again Hungarian Judith Polgar. Here's a book which I borrowed from John many years ago. I did a very detailed review. Of all the book reviews I've ever done, it's probably the one which came out the best. And there's Jennifer Shahade. She made a number of gaffes in terms of chess history or getting people's names wrong and stuff. But the book itself is very entertaining and interesting. It took itself a little bit too seriously in a way. But for all of that, I'm glad she wrote it. And it contains some unique information. And in a way, that's what you want, isn't it? Here is Pia Kramling, Swedish. Her daughter now plays, and she's also married to Juan Manuel Bellon. And here we have Etty, known to the world as Antoinetta Stefanova. She was Lady World Champion about 15 years ago. And here we have the English #1, Jovi Hauska. As a teenager, she used to wear glasses, but she no longer finds the need. This is a picture I think I referred you to when I was showing about chess coffee table books. It is, I suppose it's a mummy, isn't it? One of the queens. And this is an article by Ray Keane, OBE. And here is a swashbuckling game, typical of the play in the Hamilton Russell Cup. And this is a game between Dominic Lawson, whom I mentioned previously and was interviewed, and is now the president of the ECF, English Chess Federation, and Natasha Reagan, who is in cahoots with Matthew Sadler, talking about chess computers and also giving commentaries on the games. Here's an article by a very unusual, if only from where he comes from, Grandmaster David Smerton. His various bar charts to talk about statistics down, statistics and lies and statistics. I won't trouble you with those. There's Magnus Carlsen. Another article about Vera Menchik. There she is. She settled in England. This is an article by Jimmy Adams defending the book that was written by Ray Keane and Byron Jacobs on the last World Championship. I hesitate to read it out. It's very long. Here is Mr. Tiviakov. We don't hear that much about anymore. It looks like he's wearing my pajama top. He probably isn't. It says, here is Sergei Tiviakov wearing James Pratt's pajama. No, I'm putting you on. Now, look, we've had a picture of Vera Menchik, and then there's an enormous picture right at the end of the lady again. No disrespect to the picture, the photographer, or even, but do we want that? Here are some games. Once again, they may be in the standard anthologies. I just don't know. Endgame Studies by Ian Watson and their solutions. That's it. I won't show you any more for the moment. I'll put contact details down below. I suggest you take out a subscription. You can get 12 issues a year, one per month. And it's a very colourful and well-stocked magazine. It's been going since 1881. And I'm sure they deserve every encouragement to go for another, whatever it is, another 180, 200 years. I've been James Pratt. Thank you very much. Goodbye.